Melkor arrived on Arda after his defeat in the First War in 3400 of the Era of the Lamps. He then built the hellish fortress of Utumno in the Iron Mountains. The enormous lamps Iluin and Ormal illuminated all of Arda at that time, but the light reaching Utumno was dimmed and cold, so the Valar were not yet aware of the hidden fortress within the mountains. Melkor began to weave his vile plans. Utumno served as his base of operations during the destruction of both lamps, which reshaped Arda's geography and forced the Valar to move their seat from the central island of Almaren to Aman in the west. If you like our videos, subscribe to the channel and write a comment. It helps us create better and better content. Utumno was carved deep within the mountains, and its caverns stretched for many miles. The chambers were filled with fire and legions of the fallen Valar's followers. The lands in the north remained deserted for thousands of years, and no one even attempted to settle there. The evil hidden within the earth effectively deterred all races. It was likely there that the first elves around 1080 of the Era of the Trees were transformed into the wretched creatures later known as orcs. Upon learning of Melkor's influence on Ilúvatar's firstborn, the Valar decided to declare war on him and crush the evil while they had the opportunity. Thus, in 1090 of the Era of the Trees, the Battle of the Powers began, shaking Arda and creating the shores of Beleriand and many bays. Over the next 2 years, Melkor was defeated but retreated into Utumno. The siege of the fortress lasted another 7 years until the fallen Valar was captured by Tulkas and imprisoned. Utumno was completely razed to the ground. Utumno, however, was not Melkor's only fortress. In the Era of the Trees, a stronghold called Angband was also established, intended to serve as the first line of defense against an attack by the Valar. It was located on the western edge of the Iron Mountains, and initially, Sauron held power there. During the Battle of the Powers, Angband was also destroyed, but built in the likeness of Utumno. It consisted of a complex of caverns, and the creatures dwelling there managed to escape the Valar's wrath. Among them were Sauron and the Balrogs. The fallen Valar's servants awaited their master's return, rebuilding the ruined fortress in the meantime. In 1400 of the Era of the Trees, Morgoth managed to escape captivity and befriended the elves living there. However, this was a facade, and after lulling them into a false sense of security, he, along with Ungoliant, stole the Silmarils and destroyed the light of the trees of Valinor. Together, they fled to Beleriand, where the enraged and deceived Ungoliant ensnared Morgoth in her webs, preparing to devour him. Morgoth's terrifying scream was heard all the way in Angband, and the Balrogs lurking there rushed to his aid like a fiery storm. Overwhelmed by the number of opponents, Ungoliant was forced to retreat. Melkor then decided to settle in Angband, making a few changes, namely raising 3 volcanic mountain peaks known as Thangorodrim. These peaks served as chimneys for the forges hidden deep underground. From time to time, they spewed fire and lava, but primarily emitted toxic fumes that could prove deadly to the elves Melkor so despised. At the base of the central mountain, on the southern side, was the gate to Angband, guarded in later years by the giant wolf Karkaroth. Along the valley lay entrenchments, walls, and towers. Morgoth also ensured that his troops could easily leave Angband to commence fighting by constructing numerous hidden entrances at the foot of the mountains. The walls inside were carved with various twisted figures of trolls, orcs, and balrogs. Similar carvings were also found in many courtyards. In the lowest hall was Morgoth's throne room. The hall was accessed through the gate, and the room itself was supported by columns shaped like giant serpent trees. The floor was laid with bronze, and at the center of the hall stood a throne, carved to resemble wolves and fiery demons. Above the throne were the shining Silmarils. Though the throne room was called the lowest hall, there were even lower levels, primarily used as mines. Initially, the great eagles also lived atop Thangorodrim, likely spying on behalf of Manwë, but over time they too moved away from this place, until the War of Wrath. Beren and Luthien were the only ones who willingly entered Angband. They stole a Silmaril and almost paid for their venture into the hellish fortress with their lives.